This video is designed to teach you about the metric system, which is the system we'll be using for all of our measurements in science class this year. Some people are intimidated by the metric system because it's a little bit different than what we typically use, but honestly, it's much easier. If you think about our traditional Western system of measurement, we're using things like feet, which breaks things down into units of 12, right? You got 12 inches to a foot. We've got ounces, which breaks things down into units of 16, 16 ounces in a pound. Then you have measurements like yards, so you got 3 feet to a yard. So you're doing math in all kinds of bizarre increments. I mean, how many times can you add up multiples of 16 before you start losing track of the numbers? Whereas the metric system is a base 10 system, meaning that everything is based on units of 10, which makes things relatively simple when you're converting between units. As far as this diagram goes, I've got my lightsaber pointer because this is Jedi stuff here with the metric system, and of course it's got to be green, the Yoda lightsaber. But we're looking at the units. Some of these you will hopefully recognize. Kilo, as in like kilograms or kilometers. Hecto is one that's less often used. That's units of 100. Deca is units of 10. Then we have what I end up calling the base unit. So for example, if we're talking about distance, the base unit would be meters. If we're talking about weight, it would be grams. Or if we're talking about volume, then it would be liters. Something to point out for liters, a lot of our measurements are actually done in liters even if you don't realize it. A lot of your standard water bottles are 16.9 fluid ounces, which is kind of an odd measurement. That's because that's an even 500 milliliters. So even though in the United States we don't use the metric system very commonly, a lot of the food and things that you buy is actually measured in metric units, and then they get converted into like the Western units of ounces or whatever it would be. But once we go down below our base unit, things are now getting smaller. So deci means 1/10 of whatever your base unit is. So a decimeter would be 1/10 of a meter. We're usually more familiar with things like centimeter, which is 1/100th of a meter, and then even smaller than that would be a millimeter, 1/1000th of a meter. There's an easy mnemonic you can use to help you memorize the different steps in the metric system. We'll go over that one here on the next page. So the mnemonic to help you remember this, which I've shamelessly stolen from Mr. Oakley, is kids have dropped over dead converting metric. So this is obviously a joke at how hard everyone seems to think this is, even though it's really not that bad. But we'll use our diagram over here to sort of help guide us through this one. Kids up here at the top stands for kilo. Have gives you hecto. Dropped is deca. Get our picture out of the way up here. Just kind of use that as a guide as we're going through this. O is the tough one. This one we describe as open, meaning like this is the base unit. Whatever it is that we're talking about, this is the one that doesn't get a prefix in front of it. For example, if we're measuring in meters, it's a kilometer, a hectometer, a decimeter, a decameter, or just a meter. So the base unit does not get any kind of a prefix. But then that brings us down to dead, that's deci. Probably the most common mistake here is to confuse deca and deci. An easy way to remember this is that centi is also a smaller one, and those both end in I. So deci and centi are both making things smaller for us. Converting then is the centi one I was just talking to you about. And then metric, milli. So all of the smaller ones, deci, centi, and milli, are making things tiny, which is an easy way to kind of go through and remember that. So they all have the I ending for the smaller ones, and then these aren't quite as uniform, but got two O's and an A ending up there at the top. So hopefully this mnemonic will help you. One other thing to make sure you pick up from this is the three major groups of measurement. And again, meters are for distance. Oftentimes in class we'll be using centimeters as our unit of measurement, grams as our unit of mass. Typically we will just be using grams. We just use the base unit. We don't typically use anything as heavy as a kilogram, although in physics or something you might be using that. And then for liters, we're most often using milliliters, actually, our smallest unit of measurement, because that's our most precise unit. So hopefully this video has helped taken away some of the fear that you may have about the metric system. I promise you it's really not that hard to use. So I appreciate you watching, and make sure you take a minute to answer the questions after you're done. Thanks.